Walkthroughs.
Good morning, Steve.
That's a little better, Lauren. That's a little better. Can somebody beat it?
Sorry, no rainbows and sunshines today.
Uh,
Just showers and clouds.
did that land situation go south or?
No,
No.
we're hopefully gonna have that taken care of without the lands. So hopefully we can get I'll know by the end of the day today.
Yeah. Your kids not sleep through the night, buddy?
No, it was a rough night. I don't know. Just one of those, I don't know, full moon or whatever it was. It's just. But I do have a question this morning.
All right, let's get right into that.
So it's basically deals with the town of Palmer. It's Eversource, or yeah, I believe it's Eversource, and my client's trying to switch the electrical to his name, and Eversource is saying Palmer has to come out and do some kind of inspection. I don't know if it's a language barrier that they're thinking it's a brand new build or something, but it's a townhouse that's been built a while ago, and they're asking for some kind of that he has to call the town for an inspection. Has anybody heard that?
Anybody? I have never heard of that. So this is
That's what I thought. I think
Yeah.
he's telling them it's a brand new house. For him, it's a brand new house, but it's not a brand new house. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody heard an electric company coming out to do an inspection? Steve, save the day. What do you got?
Well, I live in Palmer, so there's this big to do in Palmer. We have a whole like petition and team of people that are, trying to fight Eversource and all this stuff. And it may be that there's a big problem with Eversource and electric companies going by and they estimate things. That's how the bills. People are like, how did I was gone and in Florida and I didn't use anything. And they're like, oh, we just do drive-bys and we estimate. So it may be when they're closing out someone's account, they need to go there and get an actual reading rather than doing their drive-by. So I'm wondering if that's what it is. Like they need to actually like verify actual readings so that, they're not continually estimating when it's a new owner. That's the only thing I can think of based on what I know.
All right, appreciate it.
Yeah. That actually makes some.
I was going to say that I don't know Palmer specific. I have heard of, sometimes if the meter is broken or if they're not able to get a read, they'll say that someone has to come out. And again, if there was a language barrier, that might have been the miscommunication, that if they have to come out to fix the meter in order to be able to read it, because if they can't check it, that's a possibility, but I don't know if it's something that's Palmer specific.
All right, thanks. You're muted, Steve.
Sorry. Anybody else want to chime in on this? Because I think that's making some sense what Steve is saying, right? And what Kate is kind of following up with. So,
Because I know it was vacant for a while, so I'm guessing that's probably why.
cool. Anybody else have something going on a transaction that's just unique, different? Maybe even if it's not unique or different to you. Remember, a lot of people on the call, just something that's weird, or hey, this has happened. This is the second time it's happened to me, but I thought I'd share it here. Lauren.
So I've got a property that's supposed to close tomorrow. The selling side agent actually went to the property yesterday to just do like a final look around everything and noticed new water spots in one of the bathrooms. We had requested some plumbing be done as part of our repair request. It was all completed, but now we have these new water spots. They could have very easily not gone and done that. So I'm very grateful that we have good people on the other side. But now to access where they believe this leak is coming from, they have to cut a hole in the wall to get the plumber in there. So they believe they can get whatever the issue is fixed. However, cannot guarantee in a day that they'll be able to have the wall repaired also. So then conversation with my clients yesterday on what was going on, kind of what their options are. They guaranteed it would get done, just not before we sign tomorrow. So, you know, we went over all the options. Either we can, you know, just trust that they get it done and sign tomorrow. We could reach out to our attorney, who happens to be on the call this morning, for a holdback on that property, or we could wait and sign until next week when everything's completed. So there's always, you know, some final things I find right as wrapping up, but there's always oftentimes multiple solutions to that. So I'm just waiting this morning for their decision on whether they want to move forward and sign and do that holdback, or if they want to wait to sign early next week instead.
I'll throw another option out, Lauren, too. We could just pay the contractor, right? Not do the holdback. We could just pay the contractor if we know what the scope is. Just we want a paid invoice that the seller paid that contractor, and your buyers are okay, you know, having the work done at some point in the future, depending on the contractor's time and availability, too. So, cool. So just out of curiosity, a listing agent went over just to check on the repairs that they said that were going to be done, or?
She just was doing just a final check around the whole property before it closes. That way, before we went in there for our final walkthrough, nothing that would be surprising. Make sure there's no, you know, paint cans left. We run into that all the time. Just little things, opening the cabinets, doing a final wipe on like the appliances and things like that, in order to, you know, help the seller out and make sure everything's good.
And also, out of curiosity, these new leaks, were these found in the area that the repair was done? Is it possible that the repair was not done adequately, or is this a different area?
It is possible because it was an area, and we thought that there was a small leak from the sink upstairs going to downstairs. We thought that was the issue. So they repaired that, but then they noticed that it was still wet coming back. So they realized that it was likely not what they had fixed upstairs, that was still staying dry, that there's something else. So they wanted to make sure that they addressed
Gotcha.
it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say a lot of times when, and this is not necessarily in this situation, obviously, because, you know, Lauren is fantastic at this, but a lot of times what will happen is you'll see the, you know, if there's a repair that was supposed to be done and something, and, you know, they're, all right, cool, we did the repair, we put everything back. Now you've got new water spots. Immediately the buyer is now 100% does not trust the seller. They didn't do the repairs. They didn't do what they said they would do. And now you're fighting an uphill battle to either get them to close at all, or, to, you know, because now everything is deceitful. Everything in the wall is wrong. Like it just, they're going to spiral. And Lauren is fantastic. I know her clients are not going to be spiraling because she's so good at this, but it is really hard to manage those expectations once they have this feeling of mistrust. And it's just going to keep, and then we end up, you know, then they're calling me telling they don't want to close. And now we're trying to figure out how we save this deal in the last minute because of something silly like this. And it's so important to handle it the way Lauren is, just very calmly, like, this is, you know, we fixed the one thing. They fixed it, and we found out that that's not what it was. So they're going to go back and look and fix it again. Just to try not, some people make the seller into a villain. Like they didn't do it. And then you're going to end up in this spiral where it just goes off. But if you can handle it calmly and we're going to get this done, you know, here are the solutions. We already have solutions where I'm not bringing you any problems without solutions. That's going to really make your own job easier than trying to fight that uphill battle of a distrusting buyer who doesn't like the seller anymore.
I think the other thing that's key in this instance is the listing agent, right? It's much easier when the listing agent is the one coming to the table and saying, hey, look, we did it. I checked on the work. It's not done. The sellers feel horrible. We're not sure what happened, but we are going to get this right for your buyers, right? That is much different than the seller never goes there. The buyer shows up for final walkthrough. We find the spots, or worse, somehow we missed the spots. We didn't even see the spots. We close, and now, oh my God, there's spots, and they didn't fix it right. What else didn't they fix right? So this is a great point, Kate, and I think just two pros as far as the agents are concerned here, and apparently there's a professional attorney on this one as well. But yeah, just can make these things go so much smoother and keep a deal together. So I love it. Great share. Who else? This is a good one. I know Kate's waiting and she just can't wait to talk about surveys.
I was terrified it was going to put you guys back to sleep this morning with this one. So basically I had a property, and this particular issue came up when I was representing the sellers. And so the buyers, what's the first thing you do when, your number one way to check out your land? You get a plot plan. And that's, we get it for the lender, we get it for the buyer, so that you have that. We always want to get one in the purchase side, just so that you have an idea and you can see. And the way I always explain it is, these are your boundary lines, and it's showing you that your buildings are within the boundary lines. You are not encroaching on your neighbors. They are not encroaching on you. However, sometimes that plot plan comes back and there are encroachments and things are over the line. So in this scenario, the buyers got their plot plan and it said that the garage and a piece of the fence were 2 feet over the line. Now, I went back and looked at the survey and I said, this is a 50-year-old garage. It's been there for years. So now I'm looking back in the town records. I'm looking at, does anyone have any past plot plans? And so we're trying to figure this out. Buyer won't be happy unless we get an instrument survey to make sure that it is not over the line. So the next step, your next line of defense, if your plot plan comes back and then there's encroachments, is always going to be your instrument survey. So that's the next step. So we ask for an instrument survey. And depending on the land, it can be anywhere from like $350 to $700 roughly. Like that's about what they're looking at right now. And that's when they come out and they've got the lasers and they set up the tripod and they are going to find your pins if there are pins in your land, especially, out in Western Mass, we see a lot of properties that have pins. We don't see a ton of the properties that are saying, at this corner of the tree. Sometimes that you have landmarks in your description. When you have landmarks, you're going to really need an instrument survey because things move, rocks move, they get moved, walls get taken down. So we get the instrument survey and lo and behold, garage is not over the line. It's, 50 years of magic is still correct. It's exactly what it was supposed to be. So we bring that back. That was on the seller side and, we got that taken care of. But if you're on the buy side, what are the first questions that you want to ask when you get that plot plan and it looks like there's a shed that's over the line? If it's a shed, my first ask is I go straight to the attorney and I say, hey, ask your seller, is this shed movable? Is it on plats? Is it just sitting there on platforms and we can pull it off and get it back onto the land where it's supposed to be so it's not encroaching on the neighbors anymore? That's number one. That's my first question. Number two is, how long has it been there? Did the buyers put it up? And if the buyers put up this shed or if they built this garage, did they get, was it a big enough project that they had permits? So now I need to find out, let's get this permit because they should have come out and checked to make sure it wasn't over the line when that permit got closed. So that's the next step you want to take in that instance. Once we get to a point where we have no permits that say, it was fine, it's, buyer built the shed on their own in the backyard and they just happened to put it 5 feet over the line or the corners there, it's not movable, they built a cement slab, so now we want to go and we want to double check. So that's our next step to go for an instrument survey. So those are the steps you kind of want to take that you don't have the panic moments when you're like, oh my gosh, there's no way to fix this. And then what do you do if you find out that, okay, they did build that shed and there is a slab and it is 5 feet over the line at a corner point? What do you do? What's the point of the plot plan in the survey? Why do you want that? So you want it because they're trying to confirm that there's not going to be title issues down the line with the encroached neighbor. That's the point. So it's the neighbor who is going to cause any issues. That's what everybody is trying to avoid. So we solve the problem. If we're a seller and we have a property and our slab is over the line and we can't move it and there's nothing we can do, go to your neighbor. Hey, man, I built this and I'm really sorry. I built it over your line. Can we get an easement? Can we put a maintenance agreement in place saying that I'm allowed to be over your line and I'll maintain it and take care of it and it's none of your concern? All of these things, those are the easiest ways to get it done. It's just have your seller go talk to their neighbor. Like, hey, is this cool with you? If it's not cool with them, well then, sometimes they're going to have to take it back. They're going to have to go out there and break it down and move it off their land. Other times, if you've got, a good friendly neighbor, like, oh yeah, I didn't even realize that was over the line. Yeah, sure. I'll sign an easement. We'll take care of that. So that's what we do if it is over the line and there's nothing we can do. Our hope is that we get the easement and we get that taken care of. If we cannot get the buyer and the seller, or if we can't get the neighbor to sign anything with the buyer so that the buyer is set that their title will be secure going down the road, now we have to look into going to court because now we have to go to land court to see if they're going to allow this to go or if they're going to demand that it be taken down. So these are all the steps. That's the final step that you really don't want to get to, because the court is almost always going to say, was this your error? Then this is your folly. You're going to have to take it back. You're going to have to do the destruction, get it off the land, repair the neighbor's land to what it used to be. So it may be reseeding, fixing a planter, whatever the case may be, but get that off their land. Always easement is the way we want to go, but hopefully it's something like a small shed that, was not actually is movable and you can pull it just off the line or something like that. But otherwise, if it's really coming down to it and it's over the line, you're going to have to go and get that easement, or we're going to have to go and check out land court. Does anyone have any questions about that? Or has anyone else run into an issue where something was over the line or their plot plan said to get an instrument survey because there were encroachments? I know I've had them with some of you.
Yeah, we've talked about it a little bit here. We haven't gone into instrument survey, and just as we're having this conversation, I think a really good friend of mine is a surveyor, and we have not done that on the call. So I think I will. I just made a note to line that up. We'll bring him on. We'll talk about the different things that they can do, can't do, costs. I think it'd be a good guest to have on here. So
Have them on a Thursday. I want to be on that call.
all right. Something else that I had just jotted down, this is a seasonal thing, and potentially, and maybe I know we got some Florida folks on, we can talk about Florida, but sprinklers, turning them on and off. Pretty simple to do the turn on. You literally are going to go into the basement and you should have a valve for the irrigation system that will turn the water on, right? And so this is going to fill all of your sprinkler pipes with water, and then you'll use your irrigation system control board, whether that's one of those manual ones in the basement or most of them now are digital, and you can do it from your phone to control when these things come on. There's smart ones that can determine if it rained or not, etc. But I do want to caution people, and this is something that I think is a good conversation for your clients when they have sprinklers, is to just turn the water on versus hire a professional. And the reason I say that is I can't tell you how many times I go for a morning walk quite often and sprinklers are on and there's one that is just spewing water out, or there's a fountain coming up, or a lot of times clients have their sprinklers set for a time early where they don't even know what is going on, right? So they're not watching the sprinklers go. You're not watching every zone to make sure they all work. So one of the key things, and I don't know, I think it's like $100, most of your sprinkler guys will come out and turn your system on. They're going to do, at least to my knowledge, two things. Maybe they do more, and maybe we can get a sprinkler guy on to talk about it. But first thing they're going to do is they're just going to clean around your sprinkler head. So they actually just like cut, because if you've ever seen it, the grass and the mud and everything will just go right over your sprinkler head. So your sprinkler head is popping up with a piece of lawn on top of it, which is not ideal for the sprinkler. So they'll cut and clean out and show the sprinkler. And then inevitably every year, I've got one or two damaged heads in my yard, right? So that they just weren't going to work. And there's no way. I mean, my zone, I think I've got 6 zones with like 5 heads each. I'm not going to sit there for 2 hours and watch to make sure every head works, Now, if you want and you are handy, you can just go head by head. You could do all of this on your own. And most of these sprinkler systems have controls where you can say, hey, all right, I want zone 1 to come on for just 1 minute right now. Let me check every head. Let me make sure everything's working. But I just thought I'd throw it out there. It's not as simple as just turn the water on. It is. You can just turn the water on and your sprinklers will come on and they will work. But I think it is important to check these heads. And then in the wintertime, that same professional will come out and blow out the lines. So that's what you're going to do to winterize these systems. And again, a client that is not familiar with a sprinkler system may not realize that you can't just stop running them, that you do have to have somebody come out. And if they make that mistake and those pipes freeze, you basically have to put a whole new system in. So that's a conversation that we should be having here in New England for the fall, that you really, if you've got a new homeowner or somebody that's never had sprinklers before, hey, make sure you winterize these. So That's a lot of chat on sprinklers, but anybody else have anything to add or a story around this?
I'll tie into your story about who's going to turn on your water. We're in New England. It's a good point. If you have a home, if you're a listing agent or, any agent really, and you're going into a home and they tell you it's been unoccupied over the winter because the seller's down in Florida or, mom went into a nursing home, whatever the case is. I have a client, we just recently closed on it, but it closed nearly 30 days late because the sellers just said to the agent, yeah, go ahead and turn on the water for them so they can see it. Well, there was a burst pipe in the basement and they didn't realize it. And so when he just, pulled that switch, it flooded that basement fast. And the amount of water that came down in just a couple of seconds, the amount that came down seeped into the walls, it just took over everything. And now we're dealing with mold remediation and we're looking at, how high up, and we've got to cut X amount of drywall out and it's got to be rebuilt. So anytime you have an unoccupied property, you want to make sure that whoever is going in there is ready to handle whatever comes up. So plumber, getting the right person out there to do the job is key.
Adam, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just a few extra things here. I see the iPhone comment about the extra meter. So obviously from a closing standpoint, you do want to make sure you're getting a photo of both water meters so you can close on the property
Adam,
properly.
I'll just stop you there. I think and I'll let you do it. Just talk through 2 meters, right? And that it's not even an option necessarily in all towns. So let's have a conversation around that.
Yeah, so the benefit of so a typical water bill is going to charge you for water and sewer, right? One's the supply of water, that's water. Sewer is the treatment of the water that, leaves the house, right? So if you have a sprinkler system, some towns, the only one I know of for sure is Agawam, allows you to put a second meter in. I did it maybe 10 years ago. It's $750. And now any water that goes out of my sprinkler system is charged on a water only basis, not a sewer. And I feel like it's about a 50-50 charge. About half your bill is water, half your bill is sewer. So I also had an in-ground pool at that house. So anything, outdoor spigots, anything that doesn't go back into the sewer system is allowed to be on that meter. So filling a pool, outdoor water spigots, sprinkler lines, you definitely want to see if your town allows you to have a second meter and get that installed. It usually requires, obviously, the town coming out and doing some plumbing. They take care of everything, but definitely something good to have.
I got to pause you there for a minute, Adam, because I haven't been through the process. So I was just assuming that second meter gets installed and we're going to hook up our sprinkler system to it. But if I'm hearing you correctly, the town will actually reroute. They're going to charge you for this, but they will reroute your water spigots as well to that new meter.
So I hired a plumber to do it separately after the fact.
Okay.
But it is legal to do. What you can't do is hook up your kitchen sink.
Right.
Right. But typically there's a line that got to understand your plumbing system, but there's going to be some copper lines that go out to exterior spigots. And you just want to make sure you're filling your pool from that spigot. Right. So if you want to go the cheap way out, maybe you just do one copper line. So maybe the back spigot is, hooked up to the water only line, and maybe the front one, just to save money on a plumber, is still water and sewer. So you don't use that one or use it infrequently. So they will not replumb your house, but they will take care of just the meter portion. So the second thing I wanted to point out was just a couple of the mechanicals. You'd be surprised how educated of an agent you'll look to new buyers who have no idea what it is. So typically there's a control box in the ground. So you're going to see a green rectangle. That's the main valve system. So that's how you know there's a sprinkler system before you even get into the house. And the other thing that a lot of agents and most buyers don't know about is typically 6 to 8 feet up or hanging on the gutter is going to be a little device that is sensing rainwater. And the concept is that you don't want your sprinklers going off if it's recently rained. So basically it catches water and it triggers the system. Okay, we've still got an inch of water here. We don't need to turn our sprinklers on based on its normal schedule. So a lot of people are just always wondering what that little, device is. And then the last thing to be careful of is, it's pretty rare, but I think your buyers would be upset if they didn't understand this. For some reason, sometimes owners will only do a portion of their yard. So they might sprinkler the front because they want it to look nice for the neighborhood, but they might not sprinkler the back. So just make sure when you're looking at sprinklers, you either ask the question or understand that, whether the full yard is sprinkled or not. And one of the telltale signs is how many zones there are. So, I don't know, an average half-acre lot might have 5 zones. So if you go in there and you see that there's only 2 zones, or the owner tells you I've got a 2-zone system, probably only a front yard or side yard. If you get into a situation where it's, 5 zones, 6 zones, you're probably sprinkling the whole house. But the best thing to do is ask the owner, and then in really good install situations, there'll literally be a map of the yard with the location of the sprinkler heads, and you'll get an idea of what's going on.
Just bringing up a comment that Lori Hogan made here is if you don't have the option, or even if you do have the option, you could also do a well that will feed for that sprinkler system, right? And sometimes you can do just a shallow well, so it's a one-time fee. So you're no longer even paying for the water, right? So you're going to put a shallow well in, and it'll just be for your irrigation system. So that's another option to, it's a long-term saving of money situation. Good share there, Lori. Steve Henn.
Spin off that, I had a question about wells. So I have a deep well at my house, and we're tossing out the idea of irrigation because we're finally getting our grass going in the front and back. Any issues that anybody knows of, obviously, like droughts that we've experienced, and how irrigation maybe isn't the best when you have a well versus town water.
Water pressure.
Only thing I'm aware of is, if you do it for a while, you obviously have a chance of drying out your well. And as Martin said, if you're doing it, and most people sprinkler when they're sleeping or before high water demand, but if you're sprinkling in the morning when you're taking showers, that could definitely impact it. And then you could get, if you're starting to get to the bottom of the well, you could start getting, soil deposits up into your filter, and it's just going to be a nightmare. So I don't know what the answer is other than either having it tested for how fast the water replenishes, right? And maybe someone could say, hey, look, as long as we're hitting this threshold, you've got no problem sprinkling in addition to providing well water. But it's going to put a drain on your system. That's a lot of water coming through the well, however frequently you're doing it. So I would just want to understand how good of a well you have, and I'm assuming you need a well tech to understand that.
Yeah, and I'll just speak on this one, Steve. I've managed a property that had a massive irrigation system, and it was no problem, to also service a big house. So I think it really is just a matter of how much water do you get in that well, how quickly does it replenish, and what's the strength of your pump. So can you be showering at the same time as you're using the sprinkler system? Good stuff. Any other questions around the sprinkler systems, water pressure, wells? It's a good little topic today. All right, guys, go have yourselves a awesome Thursday, and we'll get back after it one more time tomorrow. All right, take care.